Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Trumbore with your nightly review for Wednesday, January 2nd. Happy frickin' New Year, to paraphrase Clemson football coach Dabo Swinney, who used that word a few times in his post-game celebration. Clemson's great win over LSU New Year's Eve. Hope you saw it. Great win for the ACC. Before we get started on the whole fiscal cliff situation, the tax deal and all that, just want to make sure I cover Europe. By the way, it's about 4:30. I had a problem with the first production of this tape, 4:30 Eastern Time. For those who are saying that Europe is just fine and is recovering, I would disagree. Today, the Eurozone final manufacturing index reading for December showed it fell to 46.1 from 46.2. It had been thought it was rising. Recession is deepening in the Eurozone. In the fourth quarter, it would seem, had deepened. Germany's PMI contracted for a 10th consecutive month to 46 from 46.8. France contracted a 10th consecutive month to 44.6. Remember, 50 is the dividing line between growth and contraction. And Spain contracted a 20th consecutive month from 44.6 to 44.6 from 45.3. The UK, though, rose to 51.4 from 49.2. In her New Year's address, German Chancellor Angela Merkel drew a line linking German prosperity to a prosperous European Union, saying, "For our prosperity and our solidarity, we need to strike the right balance." The European sovereign debt crisis shows how important this balance is. Nevertheless, we need to have further continued patience. The crisis is far from over, which contradicts the statement of her Finance Minister Wolfgang Schäuble, who I quoted in my Week in Review column as saying the worst of the crisis was over, to which I replied, "That's a very stupid comment." And Chancellor Merkel agrees with me. She said, "I know that many people are naturally concerned going into the new year, and the economic environment will not in fact be easier, but rather more difficult." Merkel does have a 10-point lead in the polls for the September election, which we will be discussing a ton over the coming year, 9 months. An important report from the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights today concerning Syria. The new estimate is that more than 60,000 have died in the 21-month uprising. 60,000. The number of casualties is much higher than we expected and is truly shocking, he said. The failure of the international community, in particular the Security Council, to take concrete actions to stop the bloodletting shames us all. Collectively, we had fiddled at the edges while Syria burns. 400 plus were killed on Saturday alone. 200 reportedly executed by the Syrian regime, Syrian army. A new UN estimate from a couple of days ago is at 100,000. 100,000 could be killed in Syria over the coming year, and of course our president says nothing. In Japan, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe threatening to retract an apology made by Japan in 1995 for the suffering caused by World War II, which would only inflame anti-Japan sentiment in China and Korea. For instance, Abe has denied the comfort women who serviced Japanese troops during the war were forced into sexual servitude, a topic that infuriates South Korea in particular, which now has its first woman president, ironically. Also, Japan announced that their population last year declined by 212,000, the biggest drop on record, and that is not good when you are looking to finance entitlements, which is a massive issue there in Japan, just like it is here. So what has happened the last few days in the United States? Well, first off, the Dow Jones rose 1.3% on Monday and another 2.3% today, 308 points to 13,412. The S&P was up 1.7 on Monday, 2.5% Wednesday, and NASDAQ was up 2% Monday and 3% on Wednesday. The Senate voted 89-8 and the House 257 to 167 to approve a tax package that, thanks to the expiration of the 2-year payroll tax holiday, raises taxes on 77.1% of U.S. households, according to the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center, an average $1,635 hit, while the top 1% pays an average $73,000 more. In the House, only 85 of 236 Republicans voted for the plan, with House Majority Leader Eric Cantor going against Speaker John Boehner, while Paul Ryan sided with Boehner in supporting it. Income taxes are going up for the first time in about 2 decades. It increases revenue $60 billion per year over 10 years, but of course the annual deficit has been $1 trillion plus during the Obama years, so as Derek Coleman, former NBA star, was fond of saying, whoop-de-damn-do. It's deceiving, but a figure being bandied about is that the deal will increase deficits $4 trillion over 10 years. I'll leave the specifics of this calculation from my Week in Review column. But before I get into more fully, I said for months now Congress would pass a lousy deal, and they have. I said Phase 2 would also suck, and eventually the markets will recognize this. Just wait 24 hours is my mantra. Long term, I am seldom wrong. Long-term readers of my column will recall that in 2009 I said the S&P and Dow would rise 20% and NASDAQ 30%. And then 9 weeks into the year, on March 9, when both the Dow and S&P were down 25%, that weekend I wrote that I was staying the course, and the S&P finished up 26% and NASDAQ 43%. And I defy you to find anyone who forecasts the 20 and 30% increases that I had and that came about. So hang with me on my crash prediction. So what are some of the positives? There are positives. Certainly takes away the uncertainty over marginal tax rates, as that goes to 39.6% from 35% on income over $400,000, $450 for couples. Of course, then you have to tack on Obamacare, the 3.8% surcharge, and the rich are going to lose some deductions, so your effective rate, top rate, is about 44%, and then if you throw in state and local taxes, you can get over 50%. It does permanently increase tax rates on dividends and capital gains to 20% from 15%, but that's for couples over 450. It's really not that bad. I wouldn't complain about that one. Also permanently patches up the alternative minimum tax situation. Republicans gained a victory of sorts with the estate tax. Permanently increases the rate to 40% from 35%, but the value of the estates, the exemption is still $5 million, and that is being indexed up to about $15 million over time. Unemployment insurance was extended for a year, and the doc fix prevented a 27% reduction in payments to Medicare providers for 1 year. But no talk of reducing the corporate tax rate, and of course we have this situation of automatic spending cuts. So, the uncertainty involves the following: the debt ceiling, the sequester on the $110 billion in spending cuts that was kicked down the road. Both of those are from March. And the continuing resolution for Congress itself comes up March 27, though by that date we may be so pissed off with Congress, at least those of us who have a clue, and admittedly that isn't too many in this clueless country, that will revolt. So no, the deal doesn't give one confidence long term. The fiscal challenges are being addressed, and President Obama says he won't deal with Congress on the debt ceiling. He wants more revenues. Specifically on Tuesday night after the House vote, Obama said, quote, "While I will negotiate over many things, I will not have another debate with this Congress over whether or not they should pay the bills they've already racked up through the laws they have passed. Let me repeat, we can't not pay bills that we've already incurred." So no, he won't allow spending cuts as part of any debt ceiling debate. I love what Senator Bob Corker, Republican of Tennessee, said. "I am livid." He says on CNBC this morning. When you're trying to save our nation, you have to use your head, not your heart. The president is a spendaholic. This whole deal is like eating a you-know-what sandwich. Washington is hurting our economy. The next part is about one thing: entitlement reform. Needs specific entitlement changes. And to the business community, don't be a lackey to the president, as so many were this go-around. It was Bob Corker, and he is 100% dead on. I loved Obama's New Year's Eve pep rally with average Americans. Poked fun at lawmakers, saying that with this Congress, a big deficit reduction deal was obviously a little too much to hope for at this time, implying that the White House was just a bystander to it all. Remember, the new Congress is convening tomorrow, January 3rd. It includes fewer members from moderate or swing districts. So more districts are tilting heavily to the right or to the left, and that just means a more contentious Congress. David Brooks of the New York Times had a great comment, a balanced comment on Meet the Press Sunday. Well, first, let's say what's happening in Washington right now is pathetic. When you think about what the Revolutionary generation did, what the Civil War generation did, what the World War II generation did, we're asking not to bankrupt our children. We've got a shambolic, dysfunctional process. Now, I think most of the blame still has to go to the Republicans. They've had a brain freeze since the election. They have no strategy. They don't know what they want, and they haven't decided what they want. But I had to fault President Obama. If I had to fault President Obama, I would say that sometimes he governs like a visitor from a morally superior civilization. He comes in here, he'll talk with Boehner, but he won't talk with other Republicans. He hasn't built the trust. Boehner actually made a pretty serious concession, $800 billion in tax revenues. Probably willing to go up on rates, but the trust wasn't there to get that done. And if the president wants to get stuff done over the next 4 years, it's got to be a lot more than making the intellectual concessions. It's got to get to the place where Republicans say, okay, we'll take a risk. This guy won't screw us. Finally, Robert Samuelson, the economist from the Washington Post, wrote the following on Monday. The fiscal cliff is a massive failure of presidential leadership. The tedious and technical negotiations are but a subplot in a larger drama. The government can no longer fulfill all the promises it made to various constituencies. Some promises will be reduced or disavowed. Which ones? Why? Only the president can pose these questions in a way that starts a national conversation of the choices to be made, but doing so requires the president to tell people things they don't want to hear. That's his job, to help Americans face unavoidable, if unpleasant, realities. Barack Obama has refused to play this role. The result is that we're not getting the debate we deserve, and that budget choices are being made mainly by default. Just as important, the periodic ugly confrontations over budget policy, the paralysis and bitterness they involve, corrode confidence and weaken the economy. A weak economy creates few new jobs, and the lack of jobs is the nation's #1 social problem. Obama's abdication of responsibility may be in his political self-interest, but is profoundly hostile to the national interest. That's Robert Samuelson. That's all for tonight. I'll be back with you Thursday. This discussion, this debate is going to be going on for another couple months, as you've learned. Keep the men and women of our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. For more stuff, go to stocksnews.com. I have a terrific wrap-up of 2012 and return figures on my Wall Street history link. Check it out. Take care.